Greetings, everyone. I wish to welcome you to Dreamers Club Africa. Basically, there's just a lot of stuff that we want to start doing going forward. But the subject behind why we came up with these two things is personal finance wellness. So, out of curiosity, I am someone just like most of you are. I was raised up to believe in the conventional way. So, I joined kindergarten where my teachers kept telling me to become all these professions, doctors, lawyers, and all that. And I worked hard. I finished primary. I went to high school. I finished my Form 4. I went and did Form 5 and 6. And I was blessed enough where my father could be able to afford to take me outside the country. So I studied actuarial mathematics as well as financial modeling. And I've worked in different financial sectors, but in every experience in these financial sectors, there's just something that kept bothering me a lot. Let's take, for instance, when I started doing the actuarial work, which basically means you're doing reviews of the pension schemes. So that gave me, the view in terms of the data where the retired people actually retire with. And just looking at those amounts of money where these retirees earn, it's something that never sat well with me from the moment I joined the working force. I just couldn't believe that people could actually survive on so little money. I'm not saying I'm coming from a wealthy background, but to me, it just didn't add up. Now, I didn't realize back then that it's as if something was preparing me for something bigger ahead. So I moved from the pension. I went to the insurance space. Then I moved to banking. Then I moved to CRB. And then finally, I moved to the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And if you really think about those sectors, you realize it's about investments, it's about money. And what really struck me while working at the banking sector is that I realized most bankers can't even take care of their own money. And this is not to say it in a bad way, it's because of the privileges that you get as a banker. You can easily access money anytime you want to compared to someone else who's working from a different sector. So the danger with that is that as you get used to being around money, psychologically, you cannot differentiate that it's not your money, it's someone else's money, or there's certain things set up the way you're supposed to take care of that money through the regulator, who's the central bank. And therefore, the chances of you actually misusing it is actually very minimal. But that does not mean that you're good. It's just that there are maker checkers which have been put in place to ensure that the money for the deposits from other people are being taken care of. And so as I watched this, I kept reflecting back in my life and I realized that since I was a child, I believed bankers were the best people to actually empower us in terms of personal finance or what we call financial literacy. And to this day, I see even big companies, calling banks to come and to walk them through, personal finance. And I kept asking myself, do people really understand that most of this profession can't even take care of their own? So what value will you really get from them? For instance, do you expect a banker to come and teach you about cryptocurrencies, which is something that they do not provide? So if you look at much of these trainings they conduct, it actually narrows down to driving you to actually purchase the product or the services which they offer. So I understand where they're coming from and I have nothing against that. But the point is, if I'm restricted in terms of the services and the products I can offer, then it means I'll have to limit you as my client whom I'm trying to empower, because my interest is to sell these services and products to you. So anything outside my space, I don't think I'm going to waste even any time talking to you about it. And so I moved to CRB, and in CRB, I got this view in terms of how most individuals and let me say SMEs behave around borrowed money. And it really got me to understand that there's a very big danger that we face, not just as Kenyans, but Africa, because there's certain things which psychologically makes us struggle financially. And this channel will be covering all those things. There's quite a lot of things that if people are fed with the right information and they really get to understand how these things work, then you'll end up reducing a lot of suffering in people in terms of their personal finance wellness. So credit is one of them. A lot of people, get loans and use them in what we call liabilities. When you take a loan to buy a personal car, how do you expect that car to pay back that loan? It's not possible. So if you lose your job, what happens to you? But if someone empowered you to focus on assets, specifically cash flowing assets, then it means when you borrow money, the focus should be going on cash flowing asset. And the beauty about that is that the cash flowing asset will just generate income for you, which then can be used to pay back that loan. And once you finish paying that loan, then the cash flowing asset becomes yours. So in that space of credit, I really saw how, let me say the word condition for now, but basically I'll be using the word program, how we've been programmed to be consumers. And this is something that we really, really need to change, because it all starts from the programs running on what we call the subconscious mind. So then I moved on to the space of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, where at least I got an introduction towards how we view investments. And this is a topic that I'll really be covering as we proceed on. But simply put, today, what I want to talk to you about is that without our understanding, which you'll come to understand much later, is that investments can be broken down into two parts. So there's what I term as the informal investments, and what normally comes to our minds when you think about investments, which is the formal investments. So I get a lot of people who come to me and they ask me, Andrew, I have X amount of money. Where can I invest this money? And that is something I really struggle answering that question, because for me, I am not an advisor. I am an educator. So I believe in empowering people to a point where they're able to make their own decisions. When you make your own decision, I believe it's very easy to learn from your experiences, especially the painful ones where you fail. But if you come to me and advise you to put money somewhere and you lose it, you'll turn that anger on me. So I believe in empowering people with the right knowledge so that they're able to make informed decisions when it comes to investments, instead of being emotional, which is most people don't even realize they invest through the art of emotions. So out of that, when I left NSC, I became very curious because I noted something that was flowing in terms of personal finance from the moment I started working. So all these dots, I came to connect them later on. So for starters, I knew deep inside that I wanted to do something and make a big difference, especially to our children. But before I go to the children, I wanted to test this convention way we have been raised up to believe. So I picked three counties where I visited and actually targeted people who had very prime jobs. And so my goal was actually to see how they were faring on in terms of their personal finance. Because from the convention perspective, you go to primary, you go to high school, you go to tertiary, you get a good job, you strive for being the top, and then you retire happily. So I wanted to see how many of these ones who had followed that conventional path were actually enjoying their retirement age financially stable. And to surprise you, 95% of these people, you're talking about doctors, pilots, you name them, all those professions they used to tell us when we joined school at nursery. I realized that over 95%, that's the data that we got out from those three counties, over 95% of them are heavily relying on pensions and upkeep from their children. And so the question becomes, what happened? This is not what we're told. This is not what we're raised up to believe is going to end up like that. So the sad reality about them is that they don't have, social places like you and I, where we have social media, WhatsApp groups, we create all these things. They retire and go up country. And once they're there, they have no way of communicating with the people they used to work with so that they can form sort of a group to bring out these struggles and issues they're going through. And therefore, as we spoke to them, you could tell to them it was just water under the bridge. They'd given up, which is a pointer towards this conventional way is broken. And so as you talk to them, you realize that most of them are pushing this concept of we are trying to warn our children. So when they speak about our children, they're talking about you and I, the working nation. They're trying to warn us that we are actually heading in the same direction as they are, but we are not paying attention to what they're telling us. So they keep pushing. On our end, we feel like they're interfering with their own personal finances. So eventually they give up. And so that brought an interesting concept to me where I decided, why don't I also interview, the working nation, you and I? And I came up with these two questions, which I was very interested in. So the first one was, given the knowledge that you have today about personal finance, imagine if you had that knowledge before you started working or before you started your first business. Just think about that for a minute. Assume you had that knowledge you have today before you started working. How different do you think your life would have been today? Just think about that. And out of the 200 samples we spoke to, 100% of them said they would have been not just far, but very far. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to relate to this response that came through. So that's a pointer towards a regret. It's like every working person wishes they had got that knowledge earlier. So that triggered the second question where we asked them, and given that you've learned whatever it is you've learned today, that knowledge that you possess today, what is it that you have done or are you doing to ensure that your children gain that knowledge before they start working? And at this particular point is when we realize something was not right at all, because 93% of the respondents could not answer that question. Let's put it this way. We all love our children. We do. That's why we work so hard for them. That's why we sacrifice a lot for them. And therefore, the whole concept becomes we wouldn't like them to go through the struggles and pains that we have gone through. So you seated there as a parent, can you tell me something that has really bothered you or you have struggled with because of your children beyond money? You go into circles, just like now we're about to go back to school, and you find all the loans being taken there as school fees. Why? Parents are working so hard, yet it's not enough. So what do? They look for alternatives of where they can borrow money to actually pay for the school fees. And so if you look at most parents, you'll realize that pain point for most of them has always been financial when it comes to their children. Think of parents who can't even feed their kids. You're going home knowing very well you don't have enough money for food. And you have to face your spouse when you get home and explain that you didn't get anything that day. It reminds me of that story we once saw on our news channel in Kenya, where a mother was boiling stones. You had this sufuria that had water with boiling stones inside. And the whole idea was to make children believe that she was cooking something. But for her, she knew there was nothing there. The whole point was let them just sit there and wait until they fall asleep. I want you to place yourself in the shoes of such a lady. And you'll realize what I'm speaking about, that the most painful thing that we can go through as parents is lacking those finances to do what we want to do for our children. And if 100% of the parents told me they wish they had that knowledge before they started working, then shouldn't common sense tell us that we should be working so hard to ensure that our children possess or gain that knowledge before they hit the working environment? So common sense tells us that we should make sure that we do something so that they gain that knowledge which you and I wish had. So how come 93% of people are not doing anything? Enter psychology. Enter the most, overlooked reason why a lot of people struggle financially. Forget about all these things they tell you outside there. You're not educated enough. You don't have capital. You don't, all those things. That's not the main reason why people struggle financially. The key reason boils down to psychology. And that psychology is the programs which are running in your mind. When you have the wrong programs, then it does not matter how much money you make. That's why you see people who win lottery big time, big time, millions of dollars. And then after 5 years, they're living on the streets. They're regretting even why they won that money. It has nothing to do with everything you hear outside there. It has everything to do with the programs which have been instilled in your mind. So the danger here becomes, if you're not aware that you have the wrong programs, then you automatically become the victim. That is why we have our parents who've retired and they're heavily relying on pensions and upkeep from us, despite them having all these beautiful jobs they told us about. The key issue was they had the wrong programs instilled in the subconscious mind. So when you think about that, you realize you have the generation one, which is the retired people. They're wishing they did things differently. To them, it's too late. It's water under the bridge. There's nothing they can do. So they have to survive with the pensions and upkeep coming from us. And then you come down now to you and I, with the currently working nation. We wish we had the knowledge we have today before we started working. We're struggling financially, but despite all those experiences, the painful ones, something is blocking us from ensuring that our children don't go through the same thing. So you see, when you hear 93% is not doing anything, then what do you expect? At home, you're not empowering your children to learn this concept. At school, they're not teaching it. So where else are they supposed to learn it from? Just like you and I, it will be through experiences. And you and I know very well what experiences does to someone. So enter Albert Einstein, who defined insanity as the art of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So generation one passing on to generation two, two passing on to generation three. It's a cycle that we pass on down every generation, and we wonder why all of us are trapped into this trap we call financial struggles. So the only way to break out of that cycle, it starts with our children. The scripture makes it very clear to us. Show the child the way, and as an adult, they will not depart from that way. So what are they telling you? The foundation that you set up as a child determines who they become as an adult. There's a society called the Jiu-Jitsu where they say, show me a 7-year-old child and I will show you the man. Our very own Swahili teaches us, mtoto mleavyo ndivyo akuavyo. So when you do not teach your children the concepts of money, and our schools don't, this is the truth of what you do to your children. You basically program them with the wrong programs about money. So understand this as a parent. It has always been your decision. Number one, you either take control of the foundation that your children are going to get about the concepts of money, entrepreneurship, and investments. Failure to do that, what you're basically doing, which is the second option, is you're handing over your children to the society and telling the society, please do this job for me. I want to empower my children with the concepts of money and investments and entrepreneurship. Either way, it is your decision. So if you want to follow the conventional way that it is wrong to introduce children about money concepts, what you're basically doing is you're telling the society, please do this work for me. And so far, how has the society led you and I? How come, if you look around you, look at the societies that engage their children into these subjects. You go to the shops, you see the children there. You go to the businesses, you see them there. They have these discussions. Look at those communities. And let's stop kidding ourselves. Look at Indians in this country. Look at Somalis in this country. And we are so busy still being programmed, trying to push our children to go through this funnel of school that is just going to produce employees. Why didn't they teach you about being an entrepreneurship when you joined school? Why didn't they teach you about investments? Was it by design? Imagine if we had those knowledge at that age, what would have been the difference today? So sometimes it's good to have a very open mind and just look around you because the answers are there. And so this channel, we've decided enough is enough. We not only do want to promote and empower as many people as possible to be financially stable, but we have to break down that cycle. We need to ensure that our children start learning this concept. It's so easier to teach a child anything, including money. It is very difficult to teach an adult because they already have been programmed to believe in a certain pattern. So you have first to rework or to remove that wrong program that was instilled in them before you put the right one. So as we walk this journey, all of us as dreamers, it will be such a very empowering thing for us to do together. So I welcome you to our channel. Feel free to be commenting, and as we proceed on with more empowerment, we'll be sharing a lot of information with you. There's so much that is going on. We'll be trying to make this one a better place for all of us and our children, right? So thank you so much. I'll be seeing you around in the next video.